Today is July 28th, 2022. I am Cameron Wood here at A Place for Us Apartments in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm joined by Bob Bucklew, and we're going to talk about the LGBTQ scene here in Cleveland, Ohio. Bob, can you please say and spell your name for me?
Sure, Bob, and then the last name is Bucklew, Bucklew.
Thank you. Where and when were you born?
I was born in Alliance, Ohio in 1958. Makes me 63 years old.
1958. Mm-hmm. What was it like growing up in Alliance?
Looking back, it was pretty bad. Pretty bad one thing, I was the smallest, shortest person. So physically, I was the shortest person in my class. They actually voted me the shortest person in my class, which says something about Alliance, Ohio. They would vote on that. But also being a young gay kid where it was not talked about. I mean, it was like not known. So that whole concept of thinking you're the only one, it was living like that and growing up like that and not understanding it. So it was not a good environment, small town Ohio back then. So it really wasn't until the early 70s that, I would hear something or early, the gay movement, very early, there would be somebody on TV and it was just a big deal, but it was a big deal just to me inside my head, to nobody else. So that type of limitation is very hard. It was very hard.
What age do you think you were aware that you were gay or were different?
In retrospect, I could remember being attracted to other little boys like when I was in first or second grade. So there was always something there. There was always some form of attraction, but I didn't understand it. And see, I was thinking it would have probably been maybe 14, 15 when I understood that there was something like that out there, even if I didn't really have any way to small town Ohio. And, back then it was, there was physical danger involved. It wasn't just, people will whatever. There was a lot of physical danger there. And so but definitely 14, 15, 16, I started to understand what was going on.
Who was the first example of a gay man that you maybe had saw somewhere in the media? Do you remember who it was?
Yes, porno star. It was a porn star. Yes. Obviously just me responding that way said something. But yes, it was a porn star. I want to say somebody like Dick Cavett was interviewing. It was like a weird interview. They were interviewing porn stars, and this guy said that he did bisexual movies with men. And that was the first time I ever remember something like that. So it really was very much an aha moment that I'm remembering that 50 years in such a way. So that's the first I remember actually identifying somebody and saying it. I think there had been people obviously identified in the news, that type of thing. It must have, but to actually somebody sit down and admit it, and not be all ashamed or whatever. Yeah. And he was probably very handsome too, so that probably caught my attention too. So,
where did you first find a community that you could be yourself in?
I joined the Army, United States Army, left 10 days after I graduated high school. I wanted to get out of Alliance, Ohio. I knew that I had to get out of Alliance, Ohio fast and as far away as I possibly could. And my family all comes from West Virginia. So the concept of joining the military was most of my uncles and my cousins and my brothers, and we joined the military. It was just some form of thing. So it wasn't an odd thing for me to do as a member of this family. But that it was in the military towards the end of my 3-year term that I actually found other gay people to talk to have sex with, to be out to. Obviously, at that time, the military was, it was they asked and you lied. It was, don't ask, don't tell. As freakish as that was, ours was very much you lied. They would ask, and investigations and things like that. So there was always a little bit of that. I don't want to make it sound like we were free, but it was the first time that I found a community where I could try to figure out who I was, and be myself as a gay man. So and this was in Hawaii. So I was stationed in Hawaii. So I'm a very lucky person, extremely lucky person through my whole life. And so this was also in Hawaii. And that would have been in the late 70s. Mm-hmm. So I was in the military from 76 to 79, which were really, I think, transformative in the gay community of it, really, in terms of gay bars, in terms of a lot. It was pre-HIV. It was, the bars were just packed, and the bathhouses were packed, and it was just a real... Everybody was a teenager. Even people that were in their 30s and 40s. I mean, it was the first time that we had reached such a level of freedom. And not that I'm actually somewhat of a prude personally, not for other people. Yay, go for it, yay! But I personally am a prude, so I'm not trying to portray myself as like some big party person. But it was there, and it was part of it to some degree. And so so when that community formed, I was in the right place that I could actually experience it.
Was there someone who introduced you to the community specifically, or?
I came out to one of my fellow soldiers, who was also gay. And I'm not sure why I came out with him. I want to say he might have come out to me, or I'm not sure exactly what that conversation was about or who was actually first. But I came out to him, and he already knew some folks. So he knew some other people in the military and hooked me up with them. And, so that's how it was. You had to keep your head down. You had to sort of gain acceptance into a group that if the military found out, you would all be it would have been nightmarish, to say the least. So, there was a little bit of, or not a little bit, you had to be let in through that. And this was my friend who subsequently, he actually was the first person I knew who died of HIV, very, very tragically, but was a very good friend of mine. And so, and subsequently, other friends that I was hanging out with in the military were gay, and we came out to each other. So we were sort of finding each other. No surprise, but still, it's just you read these things about totalitarian regimes, and the military can very much be, when you're in it, when you are in the military, they are the totalitarian regime. They can do pretty much anything they want to you. So, and they can be as mean and bad to you as because you're in the military. So I've always had sort of a strong empathy for people that live in, places where somebody could turn you into the government type bull crap. So anyways.
Out of curiosity, what was your MOS?
I was a Korean linguist.
Oh, okay.
I know. So, so I joined the military and signed up to be a linguist. And if you picked the language, this was back then, if you picked the language, you had to stay in for 4 years. If you let them pick the language, you got to go for 3 years. Well, I had enough military history in my family to know 3 years was probably going to be enough. So they gave me Korean, which wasn't the first. Russian was big back then, and Arabic and things like that. So I went Korean, and so went to a year at the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California. I had never seen the Pacific. I had never seen the Atlantic Ocean. I'd never seen an ocean before. Okay, the Atlantic or the Pacific, until I joined the military, and they flew me to Monterey, California, one of the most spectacular places on the face of the planet. And the Presidio was located, at that point in time, was located on a hill overlooking Monterey Bay. You could hear the sea lions at night. So this is where I ended up. Like I told you, I'm a very lucky person. I was there for a year, and then 90% of my graduating class went to Korea, and 10% of us got sent to Hawaii, and I got sent there. So, yeah, but I was very, very much the little rube. Yeah. And I do want to say this, and it's not to get overly sexual, but it really, looking back on it, it's sort of sad, I think, in a way. At the time, I didn't think it was sad, but my first sexual encounter was I got sent to, after basic training, I got sent to Massachusetts for like training for something, Fort Devens, Massachusetts. And so I stopped in Boston. And as the cab driver was taking me to my hotel before I had to report, he's like, "Don't go around there." Okay. He was warning the young kid, "Don't go around that. There's, fags hang out at that movie theater." Well, so I was the first place. Yeah, so, and it was a movie theater that, pre-HIV at that point in time. And looking back, I was, 18 years old, some little 18-year-old, and it was wild. It was wild what went on there, not in a bad way. But subsequently, I was at this conference, and they had us, underneath our name tag, it was a gay male sexual health conference. And they had us list like what sex acts and what affection acts we did first, second, third, fourth in our lives. Like the first, and like kissing was number 7 for me. And that is what the sad part of it was to me. That was, it wasn't kissing, I thought, well, that's sad in a way. I mean, nothing to cry about, but it's like, it just said something very much about, at least for somebody like me at that point in time, that the ability to come out and date people and to ask people out for dates and at least that was not easily accessible. That was not easily accessible at that point in time. So that's that. But that's a little bit of a story.
The bars in Hawaii, were they predominantly like mixed, straight and gay, or were there specific gay bars or straight bars?
Well, I remember there were specific gay bars. At least certain nights there were gay bars, and there were a lot of military people in those bars. There were a lot of tourists in those bars also. I mean, the military is full of young, gorgeous men. I mean, so, but no, it was specific gay bars that I'm remembering. Like I say, I would go when people would take me. It wasn't like I'm going out to a bar. I would go when friends would go. So I can't say it was really specific. But there were specific gay bars at that point in time. I remember them as big. But I was also still a little Bobby Bucklew from Alliance, Ohio. You know what I mean? So, but I remember them being big, and just music and the dancing, and it's just, yeah. So
So 3 years was enough.
3 years was enough. It certainly was. Yeah.
And you came back did you come back to Alliance, or did you?
Well, I undergraduate at Kent State University in political science. And I came back as an openly gay man, not to my parents or family at that point in time, but the first thing I did was like head to Akron, the Akron gay bars, and really And I don't ever remember from that point on. I mean, I didn't come out in every situation, but I lived my life as a gay man, and it was not something that I felt particularly brave about or particularly whatever about. It's just the way it was. I'm not really sure that I gave myself too many options. I went on to undergraduate at Kent, had my first long-term relationship, long-term, 3 years relationship, and had fun and met some really great people. I then came up to Cleveland in 1983 after I graduated from Kent and went to Case Western Law School. So I was there for 3 years. And once again, I was out. I did not, at the law school, I didn't find any need to be not out by 83. It felt regular, it felt normal, and it would not, like I said, I wasn't out to my parents at that point in time. So there was still obviously stuff I didn't feel I needed to deal with. I don't apologize for that. It isn't, at that point in time. No, I actually formed, when I graduated, I stayed here. Just eventually, I clerked for a federal judge for 3 years. I wouldn't have been out to him, but I wouldn't have, he didn't know anything about my personal life, nor did, I don't think he wanted to, nor did I want to share it with him. So it was just the way it was. But I then went to work for the city of Cleveland in 1989, I worked for the city of Cleveland Law Department. So all during that time, and when I worked for the city, I was out also. I did have to say, towards the 80s, I sort of dropped out. Don't need to go into where I was dropping out to. I really wasn't involved too much in almost any community at that point in time. I was just going through some things in life. But I remember, in the law department, I was the gay attorney. I don't know what that meant. I didn't, and I know other people that were there that were gay didn't feel comfortable coming out. I didn't. Like I say, it really wasn't an issue for me at that point in time. I think the Army did something like that to me. I think they're like, now, never again type things. So, and then obviously HIV. By that point in time, HIV was very prominent in the gay community, and overshadowed a lot, but everything else. But so that's sort of the earlier part.
So when you were in Akron, you mentioned the bars in Akron. Were the gay bars both in Akron and in Cleveland that you were able to go to?
I did not come to Cleveland very. Cleveland was the great big huge scary city to the north, as far as Cleveland scared the crap out of me. I grew up small town Ohio, but watching Cleveland TV. Okay. So my parents were from West Virginia, so Alliance, Ohio was the big city to them. So the very concept of just going to Cleveland, obviously that's changed, but at the point in time it wasn't. So, but Akron, I think Akron's a great mid-sized city, or was at that point in time. It's great, great bars. In fact, one of my favorite bars, whose names I don't remember though, that I really sort of was introduced to Akron, really was such a wonderful blend of people. It had a large drag queen and transgender, but drag queen presence, and black and white and old and young, and it was just really, to me, it was the first bar I walked into, the gay bar I walked into in Ohio. His name is escaping me, but just really, really a great place. I think what a lot of us want the gay community to be. Just
was that in Akron?
It was in Akron, and it subsequently burnt down. And it burnt down by arson.
Tom mentioned one, jocks.
Okay, yes, that was it. That could have been. Yep. So it was really, yeah. So in that way, the smaller city where, I mean, it sort of put us all together. It was a positive thing, very positive. And Akron, and I'm sure like wasn't always true, but Akron's a pretty accepting city, pretty tolerant city. Has always been sort of tolerant. I don't remember any particular like police crap. And I would have heard about it, and I don't really remember that. And there were other streets, the Adams Street bar. There was, which was sort of the loungy kind of bar, and it was very. You had choice. I would come up to Cleveland, like the Tracks and some of the other ones. I mean, and they were huge. Some of these bars were like 3 and 4 stories, and they were in like this. Well, they were downtown, so that was the seedy part of town. Downtown was when I first came here in '83. Holy crap! Downtown Cleveland was a ghost. I think you could have picked up some of those in the warehouse district. You could have picked them up for like $100 or something. Now they're like millions. There was nothing there. So except the gay bars, there was nothing but the gay bars there downtown. And so the bars were never I never did well in them. I get very self-conscious. I don't have the attributes that shine in a bar. But I had a lot of fun there with my friends, and it was the place you could go. It was the place you could go that was ours. And I can remember people like, man, like sort of straight people bitching about. And it's like, you have the rest of the world. This is all we got, and that's really all we had too. So it really was. They were very important. Even for somebody who wasn't, like, oh, I'm going out to the bar, pick somebody up. That's not what happened for me. But it still gave me something to be there,
So far, Tracks is the one that everyone has talked about. What are your memories of Tracks?
I think a lot of drugs and being drunk and loud music and smoke, because you smoke. I smoked, and not everybody smoked, but smoky bars and hot and dancing and just
That seems to be a common theme. That seems to be pretty much the common answer. Smoke, bodies, hot.
Yeah. So and very positive response from me.
So you were the gay attorney.
I was the gay attorney, yes.
So after you graduated, you passed the bar.
Yes.
And what did you want to do?
I really wanted to do justice work. I really wanted to help change the current situation. I was really what I loved in law school was constitutional law, and because at that point in time, it was still like the sodomy laws, and so we had nothing. We had nothing going for us. Nothing in terms of the law and in terms of protection. We had nothing. And in fact, we not only didn't have protection. They could get you and ruin you. So I wanted to change that. I just, my mother she's always a champion. She always taught us to be for the underdog. And if you're not the underdog, something's wrong with you. So she always had that, and she instilled it into us. I don't think when she was instilling it, she thought of gay rights, but so it really was very much. And also, I grew up in the '60s. I grew up in the '60s and the '70s, and I mean, there was a time when it seemed like we were overcoming. It really did seem like we were overcoming, and I look back at at the Black movement, and as a little kid, I was just fascinated by the singing, Fannie Lou Hamer and the singing and the civil rights. I mean, I listen to those songs now, and it's just like I'm transported back, and they still give me something, and and then the women's movement, and at the time the Chicano movement, and unions and revolution and all that stuff, and hippies, and that's what I grew up with. And it seemed like we were winning, and we did win. We did win a lot. And then the gay movement came along, out of the civil rights movement and the women's movement. And so to me, it wasn't moving fast enough. And so that's really where I wanted to go. But that type of job, that's not a dime a dozen. It's not a dime a dozen. And so I did clerk for a federal judge for 3 years. That was a wonderful experience. Just for a life experience, like being behind like federal cases and getting to help like give your opinions, and so it was really opened up my eyes a lot. But I wanted to work, so I had a job. I had 2 job offers when I left that. I had a job as a tax attorney for, at that point in time, was BP Oil, British Petroleum Oil, I think might have been Ohio, but it had moved back to BP by that point in time. So they offered me to be a tax attorney for them. And then I got a job for the city of Cleveland. And I could tell you that the city of Cleveland was paying less than half of what the BP job was paying for. And my dad, it's the only fight that my dad and I ever got in my entire life is when I took the city of Cleveland job, because he wanted me to take the BP job because of the money. I understand why, and I never didn't understand why. But I also knew my personality and my talents really, and as I told him, I got to wake up every morning and do this. And so I chose the city of Cleveland, where I represented the health department there. And I worked for my boss at that time, my direct supervisor, had been there many years. And we worked for I was working for justice. I mean, we would represent like CPP against CEI. We always tried to fight the rate hikes. And I mean, we were, at that point in time, we were given rein to go after CEI, and down at the Public Utilities Commission and stuff like that. I mean, so there was a strong component of that. And I've always, the citizens of the city of Cleveland, they seem to be perpetual underdogs, so I was following that. But I also then, because I represented the health department, I was like the gay lawyer representing the health department. When the AIDS crisis hit City Hall in 1996, I was asked to move from the health department, or from the law department, and move to be the AIDS coordinator for the City of Cleveland Health Department. So that was my transition. And I've been in HIV work since. So where justice work is what it's all about, but it's also medicine, but justice. So it's kept up. I would not have guessed that trajectory, but it was a good one for me. And hopefully for, the causes too. So.
You mentioned your friend from Hawaii died of AIDS. Was that personal? Did it have an impact on your decision to move in this direction, or was it more of a general, like, all of it that was going
on? It definitely had a impact on me, not even questioning. Let's put it this way: I didn't seek it, but when I was asked to do that, I didn't hesitate because of my friend and other people that I had lost, and what I had witnessed going through. the suicides. It was just years of unfolding horror and terror. And I mean, I was given the opportunity to help, so I didn't, I think that personal experience, but certainly with my friend, I still try to atone to him. So yeah, because I'm very conscious that I'm still living, and so many of them died so young, and didn't get to see. They didn't get to see it. They didn't get to see any of the positive. Gay marriage. What the hell? They didn't get any of that. They didn't get to see. They didn't get to see so much, and the people were so mean. The rest of the country that weren't affected by this most people were just mean as hell. It was just, there were shining moments by, heroism, but it was just a horrible time. And you don't glamorize the time. There were people did heroic things there, and the community came together, and people not impacted were drawn to it, a few. But just the reaction was just, nothing to be proud of, certainly.
So what was your? Can you tell me a little bit about your work that you've been doing for the past 20 years now?
Well, 20 years, yeah.
Or did you?
No, it was,
when you moved over from the Justice.
Yeah, it was 96. It's more than 20 years. Probably, 96, whenever. So, yeah, almost approaching 30. So what I did is the city of Cleveland, I worked there for 3 years. I worked for 3 years. And during that 3 years, that's when a lot of the grants. So, as you know, the first 10 years of the AIDS epidemic, no response at all. It was just catastrophic. And I don't go into that. But by the mid-1990s, a couple things had happened. One, Cleveland's HIV rates Cleveland's rates didn't start going till the very late 80s, early 90s is when our rates really, when I'm saying our rates is when people, HIV reached the point where people here were becoming infected here as opposed to being infected other places and coming back here for care or support. So our numbers really started getting big then. The white administration at the time, and no other administration had done anything, the white administration was dragging its heels. This was even trying to get federal grants and state grants to agencies up here. The health department was bungling it, totally bungling it. ACT UP was on the steps of City Hall because they weren't doing anything. The local response by the city was horrible. The AIDS Funding Collaborative and other groups were forming basically because the City of Cleveland Health Department was gone. So that's really the position of, so I was called to the mayor's office and said, do you want this position? And I said, yes. And they said, get those people off the steps of City Hall, which was ACT UP. Now, when he said that, they realized the way to get them off the steps of City Hall is to do something. No, my purpose was not to get them off the steps of City Hall, it was to do something and get them off the steps of City Hall because we're actually doing something and they don't have anything to protest about. And that's really what I believe I did successfully then, was get the processes. And as a lawyer, it helped. As a lawyer, very well known to the internal city of Cleveland, how contracts are done and blah, 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 blah. I was successful in establishing those programs, certainly legally and bureaucratically. I had some goodwill with the community because I've always tried to be, I don't bullshit people. People like bullshit. People don't like it. So tell them the truth. And sometimes the truth is, I can't talk to you about that. Sorry, can't talk to you about that. But I can talk to you about this. And I can listen to you. So just, So, but after 3 years, the health department was imploding, which the Cleveland Health Department periodically implodes. It's been a, I believe in public health. very few other people in the city of Cleveland seem to believe in public health. It's sad, but whatever. But we got it up and moving, but it imploded, and I could say that working in the city of Cleveland at the time that I was working in the city of Cleveland was very difficult with the politics and stuff. I appeared in the newspapers under investigation, and it was just crazy crap. But I did nothing wrong and whatever, but it was just a lot of politics going on between the city council and the mayor and around HIV/AIDS, because it was just for whatever reason. So I left without a job, and then I went to work for the LGBT Center here for 3 years as their health coordinator. So I took over the HIV work, the living room, and the other programs that were going on. At that point in time, the anti-HIV medicines had been around for about 3 years. So we had seen the dramatic, in 1996 is when they came around, the triple cocktail, so people literally were brought back from the brink of death. It was, it was amazing. It was like, oh my God, it was miraculous. And there's the before that time and the after that time. But certainly at that time, those medicines were tough. It was basically chemotherapy. People were on chemotherapy. And so the support groups were still extremely important for people living with HIV. Talk about the meds, talk about just be out and talk. And we also worked at that point in time in expanding it beyond HIV, looking at medical providers serving LGBT people, the tension between that. So we worked on that for 3 years. And then I went to Case Western, and now for the last 20 years I've worked at the AIDS Clinical Trials Unit up at Case Western. I'm back to my alma mater in a different school, and so I've worked there working both HIV prevention and treatment research. So I am married, I gotta tell you that. This is about being gay. So I did get gay married. I've been with my partner, and actually some of the political work is where I met him. And I did want to talk in the early 90s, before HRC came in my opinion, like snatched all the local money up. There were a couple Democratic clubs. The first one I joined in the 1980s when I first came to Case was the Eleanor Roosevelt Democratic Club. I love Eleanor Roosevelt, but I'm also old. I'm almost as old as Eleanor Roosevelt. So, and then after in the 1990s, as I started getting back in the community, we talked at the Stonewall Democratic Club. And that was the local Democratic organization here before HRC came in and sort of began to organize and suck all our local money out to go to Washington, D.C. In a little bit of that notebook I brought, that paper I brought, is I apparently spoke to the Stonewall Democratic Club in 1991. It was right when they were doing the don't ask, don't tell policy in the military. And as a vet, I came and talked to them. It was a thank you letter. So I had forgotten that ever occurred. I now remember it, though. It'll jog my memory. And that's where I met my husband back in the early 90s. And I told him very early on, no commitment ceremonies for me. Don't believe in it. I will marry you only if we're ever allowed to be married. Well, saying that, I knew we were never going to be allowed to be married, certainly not in the state of Ohio. That would be a joke. That would take a miracle. And we got married 7 years ago when it was legal and it was real, when it gives me his Social Security and mine his and his mine and all that stuff. And it's been wonderful. As part of the Stonewall Democrat Club, we formed this small group called SCAN. It was like Stonewall Cleveland Advocacy Network. And the one little shot that you did of the wall saying "Kill the Queers" was an ad that we developed. At that point in time, we were seeing, this was the early 90s. I believe this was, I lose my decades here, but the Newt Gingrich horrible nightmare years. And as we're, radical right were really coming after us. They've always used HIV against us because they're despicable people. But in looking at this in preparation, I thought I'd better try to find something to talk about. It just remember, it's the same people, the crap that we're dealing with today. The same people, the people that Fannie Lou Hamer was singing about. And all these people are thinking about it's the same, they're still here. And that's one of the things that really kind of came to us is like, there's no mystery to these people. They are the same people that, block little black girls from going to school and women from having any type of choice and it's just, and that's really sort of what, not to be negative about it, but it's just, because we've come so far. We really have from, I believe there are dangers of young people being out for them. I'm not trying to imply that it's easy. It's not. And actually being out and having more people know that LGBTQ people exist is more danger for them. Back in my day, at least, they might have thought, look at that little weird kid. So I'm not trying to imply that, but certainly I hope nobody has to grow up in that exclusion, that seclusion in their brain that I did. It really is really very destructive. So, and one other thing. Okay. So one of the things I noticed too in that Stonewall Cleveland stuff, we talk about lesbian and gay people. And I think every once in a while, maybe by 1993 or 94, we were throwing in bisexual. But I was looking through all that, and we didn't mention transgender people. And, I'm glad we've moved beyond that. In looking at that, and they were, I'm not sure. So I'm glad we're beyond that. So we learn. So.
You talk about the kind of the horror days of the 80s. What were the things that you were struggling with, you personally, at that time, like with you, either personally or within your work? Like, what were you trying to fight against, I guess? What was the biggest issue that you were struggling with?
Sure. I want to. That's tough.
Maybe I've said it wrong. Maybe not an issue you were struggling with, but what was most important for you to work towards?
Okay.
How about that?
Yeah. I remember there being a sense of urgency to be taken seriously, for HIV and AIDS to be taken seriously, it was an epidemic going on in this community, and the rest of the world was running around acting like it didn't exist. And if it existed, it was a joke. I'll never forget that press conference that Reagan's press secretary held. And one of the reporters asked about HIV/AIDS. And his response was, "I don't have it, do you?" and laughed, and the whole room of reporters broke out laughing. And I still hear that laughter, and I think that there was such a sense of urgency that we be taken seriously, that people living with HIV be listened to, and this wasn't going, that doctors listened to people. And for this to be looked at like a public, and I go back to public health, coming from a public health viewpoint, that this be a health issue and not a moral issue, or not a retribution issue. And I mean, it was like real basic, fundamental human respect. And I think that manifests itself in a lot of different, can manifest itself in a lot of different ways, both negatively and positively. But that laughter, and so I also remember that a group of us gay folks, there was a group of gay people, I'm not sure what group we were in, but we went bowling. What a perfectly Cleveland thing to do. More so back then, but Cleveland bowling. So we went bowling, and there was probably several lanes of us or something like that. And I remember this woman, she was not an old woman, she was a young woman, and she was with, I seem to remember it was like 2 women, 2 men or something like that. I don't really remember. But I remember her saying to one of the others, and I overheard him say, "Oh, we're all dying of AIDS. Too bad." You know what I mean? Like mocking us. And I looked over, and all these guys are just having a good time bowling. So I think that, I think that disrespect for just our basic humanity, and that we deserved what everybody else would get. So that to me is what HIV sort of, to me, exposed that we're started at ground zero, folks. There's no goodwill here. There's no goodwill for us at all. None. And you asked the right question, because that touched something that Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think was? I think we've achieved that, or at least.
I think we have. Yes.
So, what do you think beyond that is the greatest achievement of the past 30 years?
I think we achieved what I did not see then. I think we've achieved humanity. I think we've achieved humanity much faster than I thought we would. I still am amazed. I think another thing is I want to bring back in that we're still not talking about lesbian and gay people, lesbian and gay and bisexual people. I think transgender people, questioning queer, all those folks. We all got to go together. Also, I want to say one other thing though, is I went to Pride this year. Pride was back. It was huge Pride. And I was so thrilled to see like the numbers of young African American LGBTQ folks. Just that is an accomplishment in America, in Cleveland. That's
What do you think is the? Is there something that is still lacking that still?
Well, I think that we're not out of danger. I think I don't know what that danger looks like, and I don't know that the danger particularly. I've got my privileges that protect me to some degree, probably a large degree. But I think politically, I think the thing that what we don't have, and I don't think any minority, and we're going to be a minority because our numbers are compared to the big thing. We're just about this, it's, but is like this anti-democratic, I use the word fascist. I'm sorry, sort of fascist leaning, fascist friendly. How do you say shit like that? That's going on right now. And when Roe versus Wade fell, and as a lawyer, I used to say stuff about the Supreme Court. Oh, the Supreme Court, and like there's some like the law out there, like there's some truth hovering out there that all we need to do is analyze our stuff, and we get to this truth. It's politics, and we've lost at politics recently with the Supreme Court. In one of the surveys that we sent out in 1993 to politicians, the Stonewall Democrats did, they included the right to abortion as a question. Do you support a woman's right to choose abortion? In 1993, because we knew then, before Lawrence v. Thomas, before Obergefell, before this stuff, we knew that any hope that we had of protection is very much linked to the government needing to stay out of people's private lives. That's our only protection. So I think that as much as we've gained, and we have, is like it could be taken away. If this all falls apart, I don't know what falling apart looks like. I don't know any of this. Our people in our communities are very vulnerable. Very vulnerable. And that makes me nervous. That makes me very nervous for the future. But that just means I've been planning on retiring here a couple of years. I'm like, damn it. Do I have to go fight a damn civil war in my retirement? So I don't believe fight a civil war. But I mean, we got to do more than we're doing now, because what we're doing now got us to where we're at, and we got to do more. And so I think that's what we got to do. So I'm optimistic. There's an AIDS conference going on up in Montreal, and so there was this pre-conference community, folks. And right now with the COVID pandemic stuff and the HIV/AIDS, where a lot of it was put on, stopped or halted, or so our worldwide global efforts have fallen behind. COVID, we were weirdly unprepared for such a thing. But I was talking to a woman from Africa, African woman, who was talking about the challenges that we have now, and the challenges of getting some of these new medicines to people in Africa, prevention medicines that could really turn the tide, and that we have them available, but how do we get them there? And she said, something, she said, sometimes I just wake up and I feel so bad. She said, but right now, because of the efforts of the people, the HIV/AIDS movement, which I believe was very much shaped by the LGBT movement in this country, but the worldwide AIDS movement, we are all moving together. A woman living with HIV in Uganda, a poor woman, can access the same drugs as a rich, she said Canadian, but a rich white male Canadian, because we did it together. We all are in it together. I hope that the forces that need to align with us and we need to align with them can do that all together. Because I think we can win. I think we won that. And if we can win that, if we've won the right to marriage, if we've won where transgender people are getting their humanity acknowledged as real people, we can do it. So I'm optimistic. I'm generally an optimistic person. So even though they're doing this stuff, I think our history points the direction to us. What's been successful about us when we've added people to our community or acknowledged that they're integral parts of our community. We need to keep doing that. We need to keep expanding that. So that's my hope, that we can do that. And when this woman said that, I was like, oh, that's wonderful. That gave me energy. Because you look at the news and stuff. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. So, anyways.
Someone, the person who was speaking previously, compared, at least in the emotional impact, living through AIDS in the 80s and COVID-19 as a pandemic, and kind of felt that they were similar, at least emotionally. How do you see correlation?
Well, actually,
not in the diseases themselves.
Right. Well, oddly enough, my site, the clinical research site I work at, is funded by Tony Fauci's NIAID, our institute. So I use the word drafted to do COVID research. So when the rest of the world went home, we went to pods, and we're seeing people in pods and things. So, we did vaccine trials, we did treatment trials. So in that way, there's a connection. I have to say, I've heard other people say that, but it didn't really connect with me. It didn't connect with me. Probably, and I would say probably one of the reasons is my unique viewpoint of all of a sudden working there, basically having it incorporated into my job. That might sound weird, but when I got the vaccine, we calculated it up, and we were like the first 0.02%. They vaccinated us first because we were working with people. We were asking people with COVID to come talk to us. And so my relationship was so different than what it was with HIV. I do know that the HIV/AIDS experience assisted the research world so much in developing the COVID vaccines and developing the treatments, that what science and research and medicine and community and recruiters and researchers have found out and learned through working in HIV and working with people living with HIV and communities affected by HIV impacted our response to COVID-19 immensely in a positive way. So I guess from my perspective, which I know is unique just because of where I work and what I do, to me, it was sort of almost lessons learned. I could see where people would, I did talk to my friends who died of AIDS. I sometimes talk to my friends who died of HIV. And I'm like, oh my God, I hope this one doesn't get me. Wouldn't that be something? I missed the first one, I get this one. So I did, there certainly was a connection in my brain about here comes a worldwide pandemic. Yeah, so in my weird talks with my friends who died of AIDS, but that's sort of my response. Yeah. I know.
Good. What else? Is there anything else you'd like to say?
One other thing that had a big influence on me, and still does certainly, but certainly helped in terms of, a couple things helped in terms of HIV/AIDS, or not of me as a gay man. One is I was able to go to some gay men health conferences. Would have been the mid-90s, mid-90s and things like that, really where there really was a very strong emphasis on health, as opposed, because we were so AIDS-centric. And instead of talking about sexual health, it was all about HIV/AIDS and SCA and risk and shame and all of that type of thing. So that had a big influence on me. Actually, I know I've heard women talk about like the importance of, like in the 1970s, 60s and 70s, like Our Bodies, Ourselves, where women actually sort of began to explore their own bodies and not having these white male doctors tell them about their body parts. You know what I mean? So it was an exploration of their own bodies and that type of thing. And there was certainly at that point in time a movement within the gay male community, specifically around the HIV/AIDS, at work in HIV/AIDS, is to undergo a very similar thing, a positive thing, actually learn anal sex. It's like that's not knowledge that you're really born with, you know, actually some of the better ways of doing it, some of the things you shouldn't do, blah, 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 blah. Not in a shame way, but in a pleasure kind of way. So talking about sexual pleasure as a gay man in sort of non-sexual environments, you know, pro-sex, but, you know, so that type of thing was very, opened up a lot of ideas in me. And so that was a very positive thing. Two, I also went to a gay male summer camp, Ferry Beach. It was a Unitarian church camp up in Maine, and I and a whole bunch of people from Cleveland went to that. I went to that several years in a row. This would have been in the late 80s, early 90s, and that did a whole lot for me, sort of like working through some of the things about being a gay man, and femininity, and not being afraid to just be who I am, whether that's however anybody wants to define that. I always say I dress cutting edge Amish, so it's not that, you know, it's not like I dress feminine, but I also was like much less confident about my voice. I think I have sort of the classic gay voice, you know, and being able to explore drag and things like that in a fun environment, that was very positive. And also, I became a Christian. Eek. In the 90s, the United Church of Christ, yay, I love them. And they're very heavy in Cleveland. And they started a gay church, Liberation United Church. And that was instrumental in me becoming a Christian, and on my own terms, and on extremely positive LGBTQ terms. And so that was also something very important in me in terms of my advocacy and justice work, and my optimism. I think my optimism too. So I really credit some of those things. So it really was about sort of, you know, as whatever is like exploring yourself or something, but finding myself, let's say that, finding myself in places that allows me to like ask some of the deeper questions in very pro-gay settings, where I think sometimes you had to go away to find that. And so I just wanted to mention those also things that, you know, important. I think they were important in my development. And, you know, and I say right now, is like, my husband will be like, he like tells me like, Trump just said this, and this is what this, you know, and I can only take so much, you know, and I'll be like, okay, I can't handle that now. Now Jesus and I can handle that, you know, so, you know, which sounds weird for the gay thing, but not at all. You know, it gives me a sort of solid foundation that I think I got right on my side, and I'm sure I got right on my side and on our side. And however I can get that strength and sort of determination.